Welcome to Eminence TV, the four of you that are here because I extremely messed up very badly. But my name is Shauna. I'm here with my lovely co-host, Adam. You will see us in person at Silicon Dynasty from January 13th to the 15th, but for now, you're just going to see us virtually. If you want to hear more from us, there's so many avenues in which you can see us. One is Patreon at Eminence MTG, one is Twitch right here at Eminence MTG, and none of this would have happened except if it weren't for our amazing sponsors, Moxfield and the Epic Storm. We usually go on and on and on about how good they are and how amazing they are and what they do, but today we're going to keep it a little bit brief because I've noticed that Scoots and Shauna keep their intro really brief and ours take like 20 minutes. But Moxfield is the premier deck building website. If you need to build a cEDH deck or a regular EDH deck or any other deck where you just want to throw some cards together on a website so you know what you have, Moxfield is the way to go. It is the most user-efficient, user-easy, user-everything deck website that is out there. If you're using a different website because you are attached to it like a mother to its child, you need to try something else. You need to try Moxfield. I promise you. You will thank me, you will email me, you will send me a pigeon mail saying that, Shauna, you've saved my life because you've switched me onto Moxfield. Usually I let Adam talk about the Epic Storm, but I'm content or tokens or anything else that you need. Alex McKinley and friends over there, they've been on the show before. They're extremely knowledgeable people, and anything you need to know, they have tons and tons of information on theepicstorm.com. Please go over there, please visit. If you are doing nothing from January 13th through the 15th, or you're Eminence 2727 says about tapped out. Tapped out sucks. I'm sorry. It's something that you tapped out is like Maroon 5, where you listened to it and you used it when it was good, but now you just don't know how uncool you are for using it. Like, I just got dunked on at work today for listening to Maroon 5 still. You just don't know how lame you're being until you try something else. But anyway, as I was saying before, if you're not doing anything from January 13th to 15th, you should come to Silicon Dynasty in San Jose, California. It is at the Silicon Valley Hotel, and it is extremely affordable because we have a little discount thing. And the event itself is only like $60. Adam, is it $60? Fantastic. Yeah, we still have room now, but that will not be the case forever. But if you can't make it to this one, you are an East Coaster or a Midwester, and San Jose is quite the hike for you. There will be plenty more events. There will be, for example, as soon as I pull up the actual dates, because I don't have them memorized, unlike the one that is coming up currently. You can come to Punt City from March 24th to 26th in Phoenixville. You can come to the Cookout in July, the Windmill Slam event in September, or you can come to the last kind of event of the year, kind of like a final hurrah. It'll be December? That feels right. Yeah. It's going to be East Coast, though, as far as I know, and it's going to be fucking amazing. Oh, fuck, it's gonna be Midwest. God damn it. Yeah, anyway, it's gonna be wonderful. It's not gonna be on the moon, I can say that pretty confidently. But, my point is that if you don't come to Silicon Dynasty, I will forgive you. But if you don't come to any events, I will hold it against you for a long time. It'll take a lot of convincing to get back in my good graces. But literally, if there's any reservations you have for not going to a live cEDH event, whether it's because you have never been to one before, you have no one to go with, etc., please message me at _Shauna Gillis_ on Twitter. Please, I will respond very quickly, and I will kind of talk you through whatever concerns you are facing, because I really want you to be there, because tournament cEDH alone has kind of changed my life, but tournament cEDH is a whole new different experience that opens your mind and potential to so many different things. Anybody who hasn't gone, please give me a message. Let's talk through what's keeping you from going. Anyway, today we're talking about design and Magic. This was kind of like a last-minute topic that we kind of threw together when we were trying to relate Seth and Greg and what they might have in common because they were both available. So, we're basically just going to let them go ahead and start off with what design and Magic means to them. I know Greg is a little bit more artsy than Seth may be, but obviously everyone brings different perspectives to the table, and they're kind of going to explain their process to us as if we're children, as if we're 2.5 years old, just so we can kind of keep up with them and have a good time. So Greg, what makes you want to talk about design and Magic? Also, what do you do and where are you from?
All right. I'm Greg. You can find me on the internet at curiouscontrol. I'm from Michigan. I play bad decks. I love design. All right. That's it.
Sick.
Seth, what's your deal?
I'm Seth. You can find me anywhere on the internet. I think that's true. I'm from New York City. I play good decks. I judge good decks. There we go. That's how it is. You'll find me judging at Silicon Dynasty and also at the thing in Philly, the Magic Con, and then also at some other stuff whenever it comes up. And I also like design. Unbeknownst to many people, I did 6 weeks at RISD for a pre-college program. RISD is the Rhode Island School of Design, and it's one of the bigger design schools in the country. And then I graduated from NYU Tisch, which is technically an art school.
Oh, cool.
Was it the kind of art school that they made you kind of like take some undergrad classes in order to graduate, so you kind of had to take art classes?
Well, no. I started at UChicago. I ended up transferring to NYU, and then I only took cinema studies classes there. So technically arts.
Got it.
It's cool.
Got it. All right. So I talked about the thing that we were going to talk about, kind of. But the first point that Seth actually came up with, and I think that's a good jumping off point when it comes to designing Magic, is that cards a long time ago obviously look extremely different from cards that we know now. And this is both a bad and a good thing. And I thought that we can kind of like each share our perspective on our opinions and kind of, yeah, good point, Seth. Yeah. Our opinions and our kind of like predictions as to where it's going to go and how it's going to affect not only cEDH but EDH in general, any kind of Magic really. And we can even delve into like alternate universes and whatever universes have made their way into Magic. But I think that just focusing on design as itself and just how cards look is probably a good starting off point, and it can probably get a little off the rails if we go too far. But basically, the thing that comes to mind for me most of all is like Mystical Archives and like the full art. What's the demonic tutor? What was that one called?
I have no idea. It was the Japanese alternate art.
The Japanese alts, like, or stuff like, I'm gonna turn my freaking ringer off now. Hang on, I'm sorry.
And, repeat that whole thing again?
Yeah, basically. So yeah, the Japanese alt arts, like, for example, the Demonic Tutor is really glaringly the first one I think about, as well as a lot of the Secret Lairs that are just, like, ridiculously different. The first thing that comes to mind is Grafdigger's Cage. Whenever somebody plays the Secret Lair Grafdigger's Cage, I am literally incapable of like, the only reason that I'm able to keep up with it is because I have the normal Grafdigger's Cage and I can know what it does. But anybody who doesn't know Grafdigger's Cage has to like look at all four corners of the card to see the different like texts on the card, and it makes no sense. So basically what I'm saying is that when it gets to that extent, to the point where the card is unrecognizable as a Magic card, and could be from literally any other universe, whether it be Force of Will, or it reminds me a lot of Force of Will, just because they're extremely busy arts and it's hard to keep up with. But it's things like that, especially with webcam Magic becoming so prevalent, is that card recognizability is so important to efficient play. So if I can't instantly recognize a card, even me pointing out that card to my opponent and saying, hey, what is that card in your graveyard? It does, to some extent, kind of...
It provides a lot of advantage to your opponents, right?
Exactly. It gives a lot of unnecessary information, just like asking for life totals. The reason that Spell Table is so insistent and every single, like, online platform is so, like, insistent on having like adjustable life totals per player is because that is information that if you ask for, it gives away so much. So if I ask for what your cards do, it's just putting myself at a disadvantage for no fault of my own. Yeah. So that's kind of my perspective, and to the point where if I don't immediately know what that card does, you can say the same for a lot of the invocations from Amonkhet because they're just fucking impossible. But those are cool, so I'm kind of biased. I think that if a card is completely unrecognizable to the majority of the populace just because it has nothing to do with the actual card and you can't read the title very easily, I think that it is definitely a detriment to cEDH play because it's different when you're just casually trying to go around a table. No one's trying to win money or win, glory or fame or actually play efficiently. They're just playing for funsies. It's totally fine to be like, hey, is that graphic cage? But kind of in our meta and what I've been playing recently, which is tournament cEDH, it's kind of become a hindrance. What do you guys think?
So I could talk about tournament gameplay because as a judge, there's a lot of aspects of the game that are very heavily regulated, and communication is one of them. In fact, there's a section in our tournament rules about player communication, and there are some things that are they're kind of different types of information that you can have and that you give out, and it's important for players to know this. This is the kind of thing where it's like if you're playing at a very high level tournament, and I say how big is your Tarmogoyf, if you're very well versed in the rules, you don't actually have to tell me. You could just say, here's my graveyard, figure it out for yourself. You can't lie to me, but you don't have to tell me that information. That's because it's derived information. But the card that is on the table, that counts as free information, and that you do have to say. So if I ask, what is that? You have to be able to tell me what that card is. And the other philosophical thing that I want to think about is the way that our alter policy is worded right now, which is that the card has to have magic art, and it has to have the name of the card. And let me see if I can quote it directly because I just pulled it up. Of course, I lost it immediately. Artistic modifications are acceptable in sanctioned tournaments, provided the modifications do not make the card art unrecognizable, contain substantial strategic advice, or contain offensive images. Artistic modifications may not cover or change the mana cost or name of the card. And there are two parts of that don't feel like they fit current Magic sensibilities anymore. One, recognizable Magic art, because I'm sure that for many people I could show you the current cereal box Secret Lair, and a lot of people wouldn't know what card that is. And two, the name of the card is in this weird place right now because of stickers. You can when you put a sticker on a card, you're not supposed to cover up any of the words in the card, but it interferes with that area. And that kind of goes back to design of stuff, and something that I think Greg could give us good insight on, which is like the hierarchy of information that a card presents you with.
I can take it away there. I absolutely hate Secret Lairs. I don't know if people know this about me, but yeah, I just can't stand breaking the formula that Magic has successfully worked on for all these years. There were a lot of real reasons and improvements in readability and design, especially for people with disabilities and visual impairment, that happened over the course of all the different card frame stages. So, there was the retro border, and then we had the old modern frame, and now we have the new stuff, and there's these legendary frames, and all the designs are made to convey information on the card. You have colors, you can determine if something's an artifact just simply by looking at the card, and it picks up instantly. You want stuff to be super recognizable, and my issue with Secret Lairs is that nothing is instantly recognizable. The cards that are in Secret Lairs that still follow the modern card frame design, those are perfect in my mind. I don't mind playing against those. I don't mind playing those myself. But the second it starts to break away from that formula, even just having extended art cards breaks the movement built into the modern card design. If you look at any part of the frame, there are vertical lines that drive you around the card, usually to relevant information, the name of the card at the top or the text of the card at the bottom. When you have something that is extended art and you look at the artwork, there's no immediate line to guide your eye to the relevant information. That's just something that I just don't like that kind of art either. I don't know. Is this just going to be the Duncan on Secret Lairs?
Well, no, because I was gonna turn it around a little bit. Magic is a game that's existed for 30 years, and it has to stay modern. So there has to be a way, and I think that they've accomplished this in some ways, and maybe missed the ball in some others. There has to be a way to update the way cards look. Look at look at the experiments in Future Sight. Look at um, the like you said, the various border updates and changes that have only improved readability, at least according to many people. Some would argue that the going from thick old borders that to convey color to very thin hairline borders or pin lines makes it difficult to or more difficult to read things. But I think generally modern frames are more accessible
Mhm.
uh, than older ones.
Yeah.
Um,
So something that like I think is important to denote is that there's definitely a difference between what is like what's conveyed, right, and what's easier to be conveyed, and then also what is like appreciated, and the nostalgia of these frames and these borders when it comes to the player base specifically, right? So like majority of Magic players are I would say at least in our format, are a little bit older, right, and have been playing the game for quite a number of years. And a lot of people are very familiar with the original border of cards, right, where you talk about these thick frames, and it's a very simplistic style and a very simplistic design where you have your text box, you have your art, and then you have the color of the card that denotes what the card type is, right? And something that we've seen is a trend back towards that original frame as the game has progressed throughout the years. I think in 2003 is when they switched to the modern frame, which is where you see the thinner lines, the thinner borders, and that's where they start to experiment a little bit more with frames as things continue on, because directly after that you do hit time spiral, which is when you get all these time shifted cards that are show really wacky spell casting costs. And that's, I think, the first time where they really experimented with
Mhm.
out of the box frames that aren't, I guess, that don't give you the perception of this is a Magic card, right? um and with that, I think that there is this part of card design where when it comes to the fundamentals of the game, the more simplistic something is, the better it is for all players at the table, right? I think
Mhm.
that's why originally as the game started, I mean, like because I have an unlimited card right here that I'm looking at as I'm like talking about this, and there's nothing special about it, right? But it's just that you have the art, you have the text box, and then you have the colored it's denoting the color on the frame, and that's as simple as it gets. And as things kind of progress throughout the years and you end up with secret layer cards and things that just get wacky and wonky as the game progresses, I think you kind of lose that sense of magic, and then you lose the initial design of the card itself, right? And
Mhm.
it starts to lose its identity, I would say, in a way. And so when you sit at a table, especially in like in a tournament game or something like that, and someone puts down a full art secret layer card that looks nothing like anything you've ever seen before, there is a lot of takeaways. It does take away from the game itself, I would say, and I think it becomes a problem too in something like an online meta, right? Because that's where Eminence, besides their in-person events, we primarily hold events online, and it can cause a lot of problems when it comes to other players knowing what cards are being put on the table, what spells are put on the stack, and I think it can be attributed to a flaw in card design. Specifically as the game continues to progress, and they kind of have to continue to innovate and drive interest in the game. The problem that comes with it is that you kind of take away from the game itself
Yeah.
as that stuff kind of continues. Not, I mean, I'm all for extended arts and ultra frames and universes beyond and stuff like that. But I do think that you start to lose focus on the game itself and the competitive aspect of it as arts and things start to expand it and grow. I don't know if you guys share a similar um, opinion to that.
Uh, no, not really. I think I disagree. um, I don't know. I think the more art you add to one particular card, I mean, if something has like 15 different printings, and most of the printings have different arts, I think that just takes away from the recognition of that card, especially as things are as limited as like a secret layer. Um, I don't know. If I'm looking, if I don't know, say it's like Birds of Paradise, right? Birds of Paradise has been printed a bunch of times. But let's just pretend that there's, 6 different special promo printings or secret layer printings or stuff that was only handed out to like a top 16, right? Those cards are just unrecognizable to a majority of players. I think the issue with more art is just it's harder to play the game. It ruins the flow of 2 players or 4 players playing a game. And then you have to like stop and be like, what is this card? It doesn't even represent anything that I've seen before.
So again, from like the judging side, I used to say that an altar was okay if you could hold the card up, this far away, and if I could tell what card this is, then the altar's fine. Can any of you tell what card this is?
That's Rocco Cabaretti Caretaker.
Yeah,
right?
nice, good.
Yeah.
Can you do that with any of the invocations?
No,
Some of them.
all the invocations are the same. Yeah.
The most popular ones. Like I could do Forest and Pact, and that's probably it. Maybe Spell Pierce.
I could
I don't
probably
even know
do
what the Pact
Pact,
art is.
possibly Spell Pierce, maybe Counterbalance, but like a bunch of them, if I was holding it literally here, I would not be able to tell what card it was.
Right.
Half the time. So Wizards kind of did away with that readability, and I think there is a level when the cards are harder to get. It means that you'll see them less in tournament playmats, and obviously we can't ever say you're not allowed to use these cards. They're official cards. We can never say you can't, but I sure wish we could. I sure wish that we could say, hey, don't bring any foils. I sure wish we could say all of your cards have to be in the same language. A lot of these things would make judging really easy. I'll tell you a story that I had. This is not specifically about art or that kind of stuff, but it has relevance, which I think you'll see. So I was judging a Legacy 5K, I think, at some SCG event. And I get a call from a table, which is this player has done something wrong, and please go investigate. So I go and I ask the players what happened, and I see in play there's a Karn the Great Creator on one side of the field with a Mycosynth Lattice in the graveyard. On the other side of the field, there is a Force of Will in the graveyard and a Hive Mind in play. And for those of you who don't know, Hive Mind is a card that says whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, each other player copies that spell. And they can choose new targets for that copy. So the Hive Mind player, the way the deck wins is they play Hive Mind and then they play a Pact that the other player can't pay for. And that's how that wins them the game. What had happened here is the player had played Hive Mind, passed the turn because they didn't have the Pact in hand, but they had a Force of Will in hand. The other player minus Karn, got Mycosynth Lattice, played the Mycosynth, and then the player cast the Force of Will. And the reason that this comes up at all is because the only card in this player's deck that was non-English was the Hive Mind. Every copy of Hive Mind in their deck was in Korean. And Hive Mind is not a very common card. It's the only one that I've explained here, although there's good reason for me to potentially have explained some of the others. But Hive Mind is probably the least known out of those 4 or 5 cards. And so it's this weird, like, hey, why are these the only cards that are non-English in your deck? What are you trying to accomplish with that decision? We ended up ruling that the player was not cheating, and I'm not going to go through that now, but if I came to the same thing and the Hive Minds were all, Mischief, Secret Lairs that thankfully don't exist, but something where the text is really hard to read or the card is not super recognizable, and the player was trying to get away with kind of going around the rules in weird ways with these cards, I think that would lead to some interesting questions, which brings me back to my original point of
Readability.
of visibility and legibility. Cannon, that's a great question. If we have time after this discussion, I'd be happy to get to it.
Yeah. Has no one tried reading the old frame Planeswalkers that they came out with? Because I take one look at it and I just like, all right, I close the tab. I can't look at this for more than a few seconds. I think the Tesseract Agent of Bullis, if you look at an image, I swear to God, that's like 0.4 font or type. It is just it's so small and it's all so compact. I don't know how you could read this in person either, especially if it's foil.
I think the Narset one is especially egregious because it has that static ability that affects other players.
Yeah. I think it's a mistake, but I understand this is purely for decoration, right? And that really the only players that are going to be using like these arts are going to be the players that are really good with these cards. Hopefully, someone's like first Magic product they bought wasn't this retro frame Secret Lair Planeswalker thing, because that would be an absolute mistake. But
Yeah.
I
Go ahead, Seth.
No, I think that's a really good point. Is like who has access to these and who are these marketed for? Something that I've been talking about a lot recently is that everyone who's watching the stream, every player that probably all of us have interacted with ever is at a very small percentage of the big Magic population. I used to work at a summer camp. The kids who played there, no idea what Secret Lairs are, no idea what the latest product is, no idea what's in any of the sets. They go to the store, they get a couple things. And it like that's the way that they interact with Magic, and it's probably fine for the most part. But the like who has access to these things and like will like I said before, is it necessarily true that we'll see fewer kind of Secret Lair or confusing things on the game table because EDH and cEDH players especially love to personalize their decks, whether that means blinging it out or completely non-blinging it out or whatever. Personalization is a really big part of Commander, and thinking about how and so this kind of comes into the wordplay with design because we're talking about two different types a little bit. One is like card design, and then the other kind of comes into like deck design and how you make your deck your own, whether that's like maybe it's not a pet card, but it's a card that like not a lot of people are playing, like Angel's Grace in Blue Farm, or maybe it's by having all fanciest copies of every card possible.
Yeah, it brings up the fact that like in our small circle, which is hardcore cEDH players that are usually either playing cEDH with the knowledge that they're trying to compete at some point, or they're playing with a very definite intent to win. So there's not a lot of like, I guess like casual cEDH players, at least in my circle. Not saying that that's bad or anything, but it brings me to the point of, in all the tournaments that I've gone to so far, I have seen probably one, maybe two, like non-readable cards at this point. I have seen 0 Secret Lairs. I have seen maybe 2 Invocations. I've seen the Counterbalance, and I think I've seen the Force of Will. And obviously, I've seen the Pact from my deck because I like that Pact a lot. But it leaves me to question if this is obviously such a hard thing to judge and a hard thing to play with in a tournament. What would lead a player to kind of move past that obstacle and say, despite the fact that I know that this might be difficult, because usually they all do, why would I try to do this in spite of that? Why would I try to play with these cards regardless of the fact that it will make my player's life difficult and my judge's life difficult? And obviously I ran into that when I was building Rashmi. I was building cEDH Rashmi, and I was like, holy shit, this is like the highest percentage of Mystical Archive cards that I've ever put into a deck. So I'm going to make this my Mystical Archive deck. And I have like 7 in here. And I'm like, this is going to be so sick. But my one, requirement for myself in playing this deck anywhere except for my own home against myself is that I have to know word for word what every Mystical Archive card does. Because I will not be caught dead looking like a fucking idiot not knowing what my card does when they're in Japanese, So yep. I like to think that that's kind of a requirement that a lot of other players have, because kind of the cool thing, it's like getting a tattoo in another language. The cool thing is that you know something that your opponents don't. And you have to kind of explain to them what your card does, because they don't know the exact wording, usually. So if that is the case, is that enough to allow the personalization of decks in cEDH or tournament cEDH? Because if I know my deck and I know exactly what it does, and I can tell you word for word exactly what this Brainstorm does, despite the fact that it's a cat holding a lightning bolt, will you trust my word enough to not call a judge based on my wording of Brainstorm. Or even Growth Spiral, a lesser known card.
So I think that to break off of that point a little bit, at least when I'm playing cEDH, and from the control perspective, it's really important to know not just your entire deck, but every other deck that you could be playing against. And so you tend to not memorize each card word for word, but memorize the effects of like popular cards because you need to know what to play against. And I think with experience, and a lot of the players that we're going to be seeing in cEDH tournaments are that experience with the format, or are hopefully that experience with the format. And if you just start listing off random cEDH or even high power commander staples, like you should be able to at least recognize an effect. So if an opponent is reading off a card that, is in a different language and they're reciting it word for word, right? I think as long as their wording matches up with my online or my mental definition of what the card does, as long as they're kind of similar, I'm not going to call it judge on it. I don't know. It's really finicky, but I think a lot of tournament players will know generally what the card does. I don't know if that issue will come up as often as we think it is going to be.
So going back to that player communication thing and the information and levels of different information, the name of any visible object has to be that is free information. You always have to be able to give the name of the object. And funnily enough, we have cards that are the same card but with different names. I'm talking about like the Thalia Mina Harker or the transform, like the Sophina slash Chief Hopper, I think.
Yeah, Jim Hopper, something like that.
But you still have to be able to give the name. Those names are counted as equivalent. And then from there, you always have access to the Oracle text. You're not allowed to pull it up yourself based on certain electronic device rules. Sometimes you can if the whole table can see it. But that's what judges are there for. Is judges are always there to provide Oracle text. And it's something that one of my least favorite calls that I've ever had to deal with was when a player gave the incorrect Oracle text for their own card. It was in a different language. I don't remember if it was Japanese or German. It doesn't matter. But they gave the wrong text, and the opponent did something based on their understanding of the text. And this is just textbook communication policy violation, which you can either leave the game state as is, or you can go through a backup. And then backups are always such a pain because it's a judgment call, and you ask 10 judges in a room what they do for a backup, and you're guaranteed to get at least 9 different answers because there are small things that can change. And we try to be very stringent on them, but depending on the kind of judge you are or who your mentors are, things will be different. Anyway, the point is, you can never trust your opponents.
Yeah.
Even if you think that they know their Oracle text really well, and you make sure that you are doing things based on the correct.
Now I'm thinking, is this a tactical advantage in a in-person cEDH game? If I buy all of my cards in the most illegible version possible, like all in like Russian or something, and every single card, and in a tournament setting, you could use alter sleeves, right, to change the border as long as the text and art and text of the card is legible. So if I sit down in person for the next cEDH event with every single card having a unique alter frame on it that makes it ridiculous, with all of these cards being in Russian. Right, but I can tell you the Oracle text for all of these cards, but this visually just confuses the shit out of the rest of the pod. Is that a legal approach?
So, the definition of cheating, it has to follow these 3 bullet points. And okay. I'm going to talk about this specifically from like a legal in tournament setting perspective first. If you're cheating, if all 3 of these things apply. 1, you're doing it to gain an advantage. 2, you are doing so knowingly, and 3, you are breaking a rule.
Okay.
All 3 of those things have to be true.
He's not breaking a rule. He's doing the first 2 things, though.
No. This is not intentional. This is for artistic reasons. I like the way that this orange and blue striped pattern fits over this basic swamp.
As a graphic designer, I would call bullshit on that.
Well,
use my language for all the children watching us.
Design is subjective.
So but so is judging, and I would absolutely call bullshit on that and kick you out. That said, um, the way that alter policy is written currently does allow that, and I think that is I mean, that's okay, because I think that expression is really important. But if I thought that you were, and there are tons of things that players do to try to tilt their opponents off, right? If you show up to a deck with, dressed in all red with your lightning bolt sleeves, and your, burn them out playmat, or always go face playmat, and then you're playing like Azorius Control, that's a thing that I've seen happen all the time, and that's totally legal. But that's like legal from a game rules perspective. There's also like the court of social opinion, which I think is really important. And for proxies at Eminence events, that's not, or that is taken out of the judges' hands to some extent. And Eminence, Mikey, Mike, and Zane have said that legal proxies have to have an actual Magic Cards art. And they have to have the full Oracle text on the card, which I think is a reasonable line. And if we lived in a world where this was feasible, I would love for tournament Magic to be non-customizable, because I think it would make it a better experience for all the players. For all of the opponents, but it would not make it a better experience for all of the players. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
because the players would get their personality ripped out of their hands.
Yeah.
But
it's like wearing school uniforms. That's
Yeah.
the way that I feel about kind of making it so that all cards are in English. They're all like basic printings, non-foils. And sometimes you just get screwed over by your foils anyway. I've given so many marked cards game losses because players' foils are not flat. They're just curling too much.
Yeah, I think that this comes back to I don't remember what the situation was exactly, but I made a point that if you are going to participate in prize tournaments, if you're participating in tournament cEDH, for the most part, there's some kind of prize, and because of that prize, you have to surrender some typical Magic allowances, and that kind of right to express yourself, that personality aspect of Magic that everybody loves, and that's why Secret Lairs are so popular, that's something you have to kind of omit when you choose to participate in a prized event, because the more personality you include, the more difficult the life becomes for your opponents, for your judges. And that's, I think it was something like it was something political, where they were talking about how like the top 16, like the average top 16 are like heavily political players, and who kind of just like talk and convince the table to redirect their focus, or remove other permanents in a way that favors them, or counter other spells in a way that favors them. And I think somebody I was talking to was getting so frustrated about that and saying, it's bullshit that some of the best players aren't the best players. They're just the best talkers. And you know what? There are certain things that are becoming true just because you are playing to win now. In a normal case, the best player or the best talker may not be the one who wins the most, because you don't have the need to talk or convince or connive your opponents that much when there's nothing on the line other than good fun and good happiness. You kind of have to be that guy who kind of coerces your table to be on your side and help you win. So I'm sure competing MTG, Charles, all the big names they'll brag about the fact that they know how to sway a table, and that's why they play so well all the time. It's because regardless of what deck they're playing, they know cEDH. But anyway, before we go off too much on a tangent that I have just started, I do want to get into kind of the future of design in Magic, and we can clearly state that Secret Lairs are pretty rough right now when it comes to legibility and following Magic design rules. But I guess I'm wondering, where do you see this going, and do you see it kind of getting worse? And my perspective on that kind of relates to my experience playing Pokemon games. And everybody that's played Pokemon games knows that Pokemon have gotten progressively worse because their design is garbage and their names are garbage, to the point where I have the first 5 generations memorized. Anything after 5 generations, I can't tell you shit about them unless I have like some personal connection to one card, because The Pokemon are just unrecognizable, and they're not cohesive. They look ridiculous. One's like a keychain or something like that. Like, it's
Hey, Klefki is
garbage.
great.
Hey, fair. There's a teacup. I literally killed a bunch of teacups in order to evolve my Cyrillich or my Sharklet the other day. And I just know him as Teacup Guy that I need to kill a bunch of. So
Yeah.
basically, what I'm saying is there's only so many fucking ideas in the world. There's only so many things that you can put out into the world to excite players and to get them to buy your cards. So there's only so many new things. We just saw Surge foiling, which is basically just like foil Pokemon cards. There's only so many new things you can bring to the table to get your player base excited. So will we continue to see more different universes that piss people off? Will we continue to see different card looks that continue to ruin the original game of Magic that we all love? Like, where do you see this going? Adam, please start because we have been talking over you this whole time.
Well, I'm just intently listening. I don't have tons of opinion on like design and card design and future of design because I'm primarily like a player first, right?
Yep.
So I'll play with whatever cards you give me and whatever design that I want my deck construction to fit, right? Like I'm a big foil guy, so if there's only one foil of a card, I guess I'll play with it no matter how much I dislike it, right? So, but when it comes to like the future of card design, I mean, I don't. There's not an end, I don't think, to how far like they can go, right? Like they'll just keep adding more and more stuff. Like I don't know if you saw the spoilers for the new completed series. There's like these new completed cards, and it's a foiling where it's like a holographic foil, and when you move the card, there's Phyrexian symbols embedded into the foiling. And you
Insane.
can see it, yeah, and it's like cool shit, and like it's really fun stuff, and they're just gonna keep doing stuff like that for every set and changing how it looks and things like that. It started with Galaxy foiling, and you're gonna see that progress throughout the game. So I think that when it comes to keeping players engaged and excited about the game, like there's a lot of different strategies that they'll implement as they continue with that. I'm a big fan of the retro border stuff. I think that stuff is really, really cool. I'm excited that that's a direction that the game is headed in because my favorite like card design in general is from alpha all the way through onslaught, that old border design, that really simplistic design where every foil had the magic star on the bottom, and it just like it hits a lot of nostalgia points for me, and really makes me think of like when um like I live in Wisconsin, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons was invented in some guy's basement in Lake Geneva. Like that's like what games are to me, is like this underground basement like collage of just like your friends having fun. So when I think of like Magic the Gathering, I find it the most fun when it's bare bones magic, and like you have things as simplistic as possible, and that's really cool to me. It's a vibe that I fit with. So as old border stuff progresses, I'm really excited for that. I mean, who knows? Maybe we're gonna have like cards that come out with like Sheldon Memory's like cardigan patches, like baseball jerseys and stuff. Like who knows, numbered 1 through 100. But I think that there's cool directions and cool art directions that they can implement that I think is fun for all players. But primarily, like my input on where I think card design should go, I think is a layman's opinion, and I don't have much to add to that. So I'm curious as to what Greg and Seth would think, especially Seth's perspective, coming from the perspective of a judge and seeing how card design and art direction can directly impact the game, right? Like where would, from a judge's perspective, would you desire card design to go in the future? Do you have a real input on that, or do you just hope that they prioritize things like the rules text and things like that? Like I think the new, like you brought up the cereal box cards, right? I think that's a perfect example of like, maybe let's not do that. Let's not make cards more confusing than they already are for all players at the table, right? Like I'm curious more so on that opinion.
Sure. Yeah, it's really tough for me because I have very strong opinions as a player and as like a commodity for Magic, and then versus as a judge. And I'll do my player ones real quick. It's like I said before. I think the worst thing that Magic or that Wizards can do with Magic is not give players a choice. I think that's why people got so upset about the Rick from the Walking Dead cards, is that there was just no other option. And with almost everything else, there are options, and I think that makes things a lot better. And I as a player am super hyped for more options, for more cards, for more universes. I love Lord of the Rings. I'm super excited for that crossover to come out. Even if Gandalf is black green for some reason, I think it'd still be a sweet card. I'd probably still play it. Can you imagine Marin, but it's Gandalf? Ooh, super cool. Not at all flavor fit, but whatever. And I think that if that's the floor, then they can only do better than that. So I think you were very pessimistic with your word, Shauna, and it was very good because you've gotten a good rise out of me. You've gotten me very up in arms about what you're saying. But that's player Seth. That's Seth who wants to like agonize over the TCG player card because there's like this option or this option or this option. I don't know which one to get, or over my printer print screen as I try to figure out which sheet to print out. As a judge, and in general, I don't think that Secret Lairs are going away. I don't think that fancier border treatments or confusing or complicated cards are going away, either from the game design perspective. This is the standard where we have 0 vanilla creatures, or from the card design, like graphic perspective. I think that they've chosen, besides the Mischief Secret Lair, which is kind of like way out there and using popular cards that people play 4-ofs, generally the cards that are getting the most convoluted treatments are either like very recognizable by name. So Shauna, you talked about the Grafdigger's Cage from before, and like that's a pretty recognizable name, although the Oracle text is a complicated one on that for sure. But then the cereal box, they're all commanders, and if you're playing that as your commander, chances are it's going to be in a sleeve where it's really easy to flip things over, or it's going to be in a place where you'll either have another card underneath or something else going on to make it easier to parse. And I think that I hope that they continue in that direction, that the cards that are the most confusing to look at are either the ones that people understand the most, textless Lightning Bolt, totally fine, in my opinion, versus cards that are not easy to understand at all. Textless Omnath is not a great one. And I hope that they make smarter decisions about which cards to make more visually confusing. And that's what I'll say for that.
Can you tell me what Teferi's Puzzle Box does? Because this is a card that not a lot of people play, but has the most disgusting looking alternate printing ever.
I think the Blood Moon is the worst. I loved that set. I bought 4 of them because I wanted to put the Swords to Plowshares in my Death and Taxes deck, and also that Blood Moon is just. Teferi's Puzzle Box. At the beginning of your draw step, you take all the cards in your hand, you put them on the bottom of your library, and then you draw that many new cards.
Yep, that's it. All right. Well, you're also a judge, I guess. But if you ask like the random player,
deck, it just so happens that I have a Xyrus the Writhing Storm deck, and that card is really good in that deck.
Yeah, but I think that the day that Wizards of the Coast puts a Sans Serif type onto a draft pack card, I will sell out of Magic, because it's just going to be the death of everything. I think design only has to get better from here. Better in the sense of legibility. Wizards has done a very good job at always having a modern frame version of a card. At least excluding a couple Secret Lairs, but whatever. Those are kind of awful anyways. But Wizards has done an excellent job. So basically every single card has a standard non-foil modern frame version. And that's really important for design. And as long as they maintain that, they can do whatever they want. I won't support it, but it's there.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that the vast majority of the player base is people who only see what's in the packs that they open. And it's just such a, like, we are such a small group of players who aren't franchised to know all of these things. You said something that I wanted to touch back on. Can you just make your point all over again, Greg?
No,
and then I'll interrupt you. No, I'm joking. I'll think about it while the conversation continues.
It'll come.
Yeah.
We can take a brief pause, and everyone can say their favorite Magic card.
Ooh.
Fun.
I'll get mine right here.
I will get mine out.
Yeah.
We're all looking at favorite Magic cards. If you have it on your desk, pull it out.
Yeah, I think I'll have to go ahead and say Rashmi. This is Rashmi, Eternity's Crafter. I
Oh, hey,
rebuilt.
I have the same cEDH
Yeah,
deck on my table.
I built this deck as my first cEDH deck because I had just witnessed somebody play casually, and he just fucking ripped like Omnipotence off the top and casted at instant speed and didn't pay for it. And I was like, this is the most busted Magic card. Like, I'm getting stomped on this in my casual EDH tourney, and this is the height of cEDH. What is going on here? So then I was like, all right, I'll build in a cEDH. And then I realized that it has no win condition. So
Okay,
Hey, season
no,
pass is a win
listen,
condition.
it has
No,
basically no win condition.
it's Nexus of Fate.
But-
That deck's win con is Nexus of Fate and a lot of card draw.
Yeah,
You swan song your own spells. That's its win
yeah.
condition.
But what gets me so excited about cards is both flavor text and just like sick names. Like the fact that I don't even get too far into Magic lore, but I can somewhat like delve into the universe of whatever this card is. Nice Feldergriff.
That's odd.
Like
Wait,
Rashmi Eternity's Crafter. Like she's literally like crafting eternities out of other spells. It's so fucking cool. And like the amount of like flavor text and cool like names of cards is so fucking cool, and how it relates to what they do and how they've created this universe inside of a card game is extremely awesome. So that's why Rashmi is my favorite. Also, her ability is broken.
City Super Tyrant.
Ooh, nice.
I got a Sweet Altar by Mike Sad from the Playing with Power crew, or Sod, because he's gonna kill me for that. But he does these awesome altars, and you should check him out on Twitter because he's awesome at SadRobot. But yeah, City Super Tyrant. I like to evaluate cards based on how playable they are to all sorts of players. CDC is a fantastic casual option because it's really dumb. You cast it, you mill 3 cards. If you hit a creature, you make a zombie. When you attack, you mill. If you hit a creature, you make a zombie. It's all fun and games. But then this can be played at a really competitive level too. There are Hermit Druid piles that use this as the commander. This is also really great for cracking a Doomsday, if you want to do that in Sultai. And I just like cards that are super flexible on, what table you can play it at. So yeah, this and like Vengevine are my favorite cards of all time.
Ooh, Vengevine is very good.
Yeah, because you can play that as just like, a sweet creature, but then it's also turn 2 wins in Vintage. So
I think Bazaar is the
well, yeah.
is the card that does that. This is mine. I already showed it to the camera.
Lightning bolt.
Is that an
Yeah, this
altar, Seth? Or is
This is a hold on. Let's see if we can focus. There we go. It's a proxy that I put together. I designed the whole card.
Gorgeous.
very nice. Yeah.
See, I thought that was a secret lair.
I would love for this exact thing to be a secret lair. Because
I swear that was a secret lair.
no, it's got this fancy back.
Oh, okay.
I think that the point that I was going to comment on from what you were saying, Greg, has completely lost me, which is fine. But it had something to do with like accessibility or the magic cards that exist. So it was going to piggyback off of what you were saying. So consider yourself supported.
All right, cool. Glad I could do that for you.
Before we forget, and as we're winding down here, we did get a couple questions for our lovely guests in the chat. The first being from Cannon Shots, wondering how you deal with slow play in tournaments and when you recommend a player calls it. And this is definitely very relevant, as we can see that tournaments are starting to go really fucking long, and people have flights to catch or jobs to do, and they need to condense long tournaments while also like identifying a true and earned winner by someone who has won relevantly and won correctly, and they want to fit in as many rounds as possible to again find the one true winner. So I just recently played in Oktoberfest where the time and round was 75 minutes, and you went to time and round fucking every time because 75 minutes is not long enough, and yet you need to put that as short a clock as possible in order to get several rounds in to continue to weed out and slim down those point margins. So how do you feel like you judge slow play, and when should players call slow play on each other?
time limit in round is super relevant. I think Eminence also does 75 minutes. I think that's what we did at Punt City 2 or Punt City 1, and it was a solid amount of time. I think we only had 1 or 2 tables go to time every round. I'm gonna take a campaign slogan from I can't remember the rest of his names, but it's Curly from Boston, like James Curly, who said, "Vote early, vote often," and that's what I'll say for slow play as well. Call slow play early, call slow play often. The It's a lot easier for judges to penalize slow play if we are aware of players who are committing it, and it's almost impossible for us to walk around and catch slow play while we're looking at tables. The way that I call players out for slow play is I kind of have an internal clock in my head whenever I'm watching a match, which is about 30 seconds long. You shouldn't need much more than that to make a decision if it's incrementally based. And I know that game states are complicated, especially in cEDH. And that's for one type of player. There's another type of player who will think about their entire turn at the beginning and then kind of do it all at once. And I'll give them a little bit more time at the beginning of that. But if most players do a thing, think, do a thing, think, do a thing, and yeah, it's basically 30 seconds for that. Yeah, cannon shots, be vigilant. If you players never expect to be given slow play warnings because they always think that they're taking a reasonable amount of time. And it happens. I think I was the only judge at Oktoberfest who gave out a warning for slow play.
Maybe I am really bad at calling people out for slow play. But like I've let people think for like up to 2 minutes before I start to think, should I call a judge on this? Which
so usually
but maybe I'm just built different, but I don't know.
No, you should call like after that minute.
Okay.
Usually the way that slow play goes is you get a caution first, which is not a penalty. It's just like hey, I need you to hurry up. I need you to make a play. And then that's at the 30-second mark. If a play hasn't been made by a minute, they're getting a warning and whatever fix comes with that.
Okay, but this is wild to me because at Punt City, which was the first cEDH tournament that I went to, the aisles were really packed, and it was hard to even walk to your pod, and it made it impossible. It interrupted gameplay when a pod down the line was finished and they had to walk past you. It was just a really crowded space, and so in my mind, if I'm at the end of that line and I want to call a judge on someone for slow play, it's going to take a minute and a half for the judge to get to me. And at that point, am I committing slow play for calling on someone who took 30 seconds to think about what they're fetching for? Or...
That's a really good point. You shouldn't punish yourself for the rest of your table because of the size of the aisles, but that does end up punishing it. And there's a little bit to unpack there. But I would argue like slow play it's so important to call people on slow play because that ruins the tournament for everybody else, and it's that difficult thing to point a figure at and say like this is the moment where it went wrong. But if you accumulate all of the extra seconds that people are taking, you could cut off a lot of tournament time. And so even if it takes a judge a minute and a half to get to that table, it's still worth calling it because it's still worth it to say this player took a long time just so they know in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, canon. That's I believe that Silicon Dynasty will have much wider rows. I think Punt City 2 as well, but I don't quote me on that.
Okay. That will be fun. I don't know.
It's super important. A tournament should not run slower because of the size of its space, although it does happen.
Yeah. It's a limiting factor that it's really hard to control, especially if you want to throw huge events.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
Just thinking of all the games now that I should have called out people for slow play.
That's a lot.
It's by far, I think, and this is unanimous amongst judges, it is by far the penalty that is awarded the least out of the times that it should be deserving. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yeah, that
makes sense. And the only problem is that like cEDH is such a political game. Like you fly under the radar so easily by just like not, getting salty at somebody, not like versus using deals, so on and so forth. So much of it is political, and having the table favor you for whatever reason, want to believe what you're telling them when you're telling them in a
Ooh,
vital
yeah.
situation. So calling slow play on someone early and often will villainize you so fucking easily. You will become arch enemy of a table with the worst board presence. Like, that is such a hard thing to wrap my head around, because it has to be pretty severe for the tables to be like, okay, no, that's valid. Like, it has to, if you are the dick who calls slow play, like, it's gonna be rough. I feel like that's just my biggest fear, you know.
I didn't even think about how I would become a target at the table if I called someone out for a rules violation or something.
No, that is huge, and that's why I recommend, for any multiplayer like politically minded game, that you talk to the judge away from the table. You can make it look like you're asking about a card thing. I do that all the time when I'm calling a judge, even in regular 2-player Magic. I'll call a judge and I'll be like, "Can I ask you a question away from the table?" And like hold up a card like I'm asking about it and be like, "My opponent did not like remind me about like this thing, or they did this thing wrong," because it can potentially make the judge the investigation for the judge easier as well.
MTG
if it's like a cheating scenario.
Go ahead. MTG 2727 wanted to ask Greg his thoughts on City of Traders overall and control decks, but also he said, imagine how much swearing the editors had to remove from Shauna on the Command Zone podcast. I edited the Command Zone podcast. So, but also, like, we basically never swore. Like, it was pretty easy. When you're sitting next to, like, Josh Lequai or Jimmy, you're just, like, your attitude changes, especially when they're your boss. So, there was almost never a swear to it out. Maybe, like, once a month, I would say. But yeah, I thought that when I got hired, I thought that was going to be a huge problem. I thought I was going to swear so much on camera and I was going to be embarrassed, but it's a pretty easy flip to switch. But anyway, Greg, thoughts on
City of Traders?
In control decks, specifically.
It depends on what control deck you are playing, and how silly you are, because I think City of Traders is a silly card to run in control. That's it. I appreciate what it does on turn 1. It lets you hit the turn 2 Rhystic Study, or it lets you get a Signet out on turn 1. It lets you do a lot of fun stuff. But then immediately losing that 2 mana for future turns is just not worth it at all. You want the game to go long. Like, City of Traders encourages you to play it, use it, and then win the game, either that turn or the next turn. That doesn't happen a whole lot in control. I don't know. It's been on my radar. I've tried it before. It's not that impressive.
Do you ever have control games that are kind of based around landing important permanents or important spells in the first like 2 or 3 turns, and then kind of that shaping the game after that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how control functions, is you have to be able to land your form of advantage first, really.
Because I could see City of Traders being like, I usually don't, in decks where I run it, I usually don't play it turn 1, but it's like a turn 1 land, turn 2 city, use that 2 mana, cast a 3-drop, turn 3 cast a 4-drop, and then turn 4 cast, and then we're back to like a 3-drop on turn 4. But that's like, you know, provided you've drawn 3 lands or 4 lands at this point, and there's a whole bunch of different stuff. Do you think it's worth it if you're able to use it for 4 mana rather than just 2?
No, because it's all colorless mana, and it's split up so you couldn't even get a Thrasios activation off of it. I think you'd honestly rather have a basic island, so you can get it off an Assassin's Trophy, or a Path to Exile, honestly.
All right. On that riveting note, I also didn't know there were different kinds of level 3s. So Seth, that was extremely cool.
I mean, there aren't. I'm asking specifically which judge there.
Oh, I understand.
Because I know many of them, but
I see.
It was mostly a joke.
Oh, I see.
There are technically different types of level 3 judges.
Oh, great.
But it's mostly it's like badges that you can learn, not really like different other types.
All right. So in summary, call slow play on your opponents often and early and often.
Away from the table.
Away from the table. If you are going to play hard to recognize cards in a tournament, know exactly what that fucking oracle text is. And if you doubt that your opponent is telling you the correct oracle text, make sure you call a judge. Yeah, and definitely really excited to see where the future of Magic goes. I just love that I can say, regardless of all the bullshit, Secret Lairs or not, I love to say that the future of Magic is strong and steady. Magic is not going anywhere. Whenever my mom is like, why are you buying thousands of dollars of cardboard when it could like become worthless in a day? I'm just like, I have no worry at all that suddenly Magic is going to tank or not exist. The community is so strong and the cards are so fucking amazing that it's never gonna leave. It's gonna be here forever until I die, and even beyond that. It's gonna be great. But thank you guys for joining us. We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here because I am so sleepy. I am the sleepiest person to ever walk the earth. But thank you guys for joining us. Greg, where are you from?
I'm from Michigan.
Fucking asshole. What do you do?
You can find me on the internet at curiouscontrol. You can find me on Twitter. Actually, follow me on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter and I get to 1,000 followers before Kevin does, I'll do a giveaway, and it'll be awesome. So,
That's what that's about. Okay.
yeah, we have a bet going, or like a race, I guess. Whoever gets to 1,000 followers first gets a free pizza and a 6-pack. So,
Incredible.
yeah. Oh, he's here in
and
chat.
speak
Don't
of
follow
the
him.
devil.
Unfollow him. Unfollow Kevin.
Unfollow Kevin.
Follow me first. Appreciate you.
Seth, what do you get up to besides being a very cool, knowledgeable judge?
That's it.
Oh,
You could ask me rules questions. I'd be happy to answer them. Or if you want to discuss how you can be a judge, I'd be happy to answer that as well. My goal is to make Magic inclusive and supportive and comfortable for everybody. And also to get Kev to 1,000 followers so I can share pizza with them.
oh my gosh, Kevin's in trouble. I have to make sure I'm following Kevin.
Oh God, no!
Adam, what's your story?
I'm unfollowing Kevin.
Not much of a story. My name's Adam, better known on the internet as Poppyphobia. You can find me anywhere that you can find Eminence events, Eminence MTG. I cast a lot of their tournaments, a lot of their online stuff. I do Eminence TV on Fridays, soon to be Tuesdays, with my partner Shauna, and yeah, that's my story.
What's your story, Shauna?
Thank you for asking. Why is your name Poppyphobia? Why are you afraid of fathers? What's going on? Tell me.
There's no like super crazy background lore to that. It's more so the fact that when I was like 13 or 12 or whatever, I had like a gamer tag on Xbox.
It all comes from Xbox.
Yeah, a bunch of numbers and letters in it, and I didn't think that looked cool enough. So I was like, I need a gamer tag with no numbers and no letters that nobody else has. So I started looking up phobias, and I saw this one called Popophobia, which is like fear of the Pope. And I was like, that's cool. I could change the A to a I, and now it's Poppyphobia. And people in games have to call me Poppy, and it's worked since I've been 15. And I also own that name on every social media platform in existence. So if you see that name, you know it's me. So
Are you on Yo?
Incredible.
okay, maybe I'm not every social media in existence, but
Any of you ever have Yo?
no.
No, I have no
It was
idea.
an
never
old
heard of
app.
it.
You add people, and then the only thing you could do is send them Yo. Like that's it. That's the whole social media. It was great for the.
I'd love
food
this.
on getting
I need to find it.
Incredible. I'm Shauna. I cast for Eminence. It's amazing. It's so good. I'm so glad that Mike invited me, and I'm so glad that I ended up going through with it, because there's nothing I'm more passionate about than cEDH, and there's nobody more passionate about cEDH and building cEDH tournaments than Eminence. So Mike and Zane have done amazing stuff, and Zane is so incredibly responsive and determined and intelligent, and he has made the best tournament software in existence. Every time that I see Eminence software command tower being used in my fucking LGS down the street, like, it's crazy. It's so insane to think that I know the guy who put it together. Like, you will not see a more passionate team than Eminence. But if you want to meet that passionate team, come to Silicon Dynasty from January 13th to the 15th. It's such cool people. Like, the Eminence crew is awesome, but cEDH, Seth's alright, whatever. cEDH is such a wonderful community because despite the fact that everybody is ridiculously competitive and will shit on you to win, they will also tell you why you lost and how to get better. So it is such a wonderful, wonderful learning opportunity, and you will meet lifelong friends that you can ask to dog sit your dogs anytime. So make sure you go. Yeah, and make sure to follow us on Twitch. We're gonna do some more stuff. We're gonna be switching to Tuesdays, as Adam said, because Fridays are a bad time for Magic players to be looking at things, especially with so many tournaments becoming more prevalent, and that's so exciting. So we're trying to be more available on the weekends and less available on Tuesdays so we can do our stream then. So we're going to be switching to Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Make sure to follow us here at Eminence MTG on Twitch, and to follow us on Patreon, or to subscribe to us, or do whatever on Patreon. Become a patron on Patreon as well. And follow myself, follow Adam, follow Greg, follow Seth on Twitter. All right.
I've heard that if you're a Twitch Prime subscriber, you can use that Amazon money to give us money or them money.
Yeah, if you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription every month. And if you press on the subscribe button, you can change it to use your Prime sub.
Did we already talk about the Eminence profiles page or no?
Nope. Go ahead.
Okay. Last plug. If you haven't already seen it, Eminence has recently launched their profiles page. So you can log into your Eminence account, look at your profile page, and see all your history and any Eminence event that you've entered in. Even some non-Eminence events that have been launched as well. So you can see your win and loss record, how many times you've top 4'd, how many times you've top 16, and what your win percentage is. I'm 0-3 with a 0% win percentage in Eminence events. Greg, do you know what your win percentage is in Eminence event?
Let's
Garbage.
all look up our win percentages. Hang on.
I have
Let's
not
just
won a
moment.
game. I have a 0% win rate. You can look me up. I'm Greg Babe on there. I'm Curious Control.
Greg
Probably. You can look me up. I have a 0% win rate. I'm probably going to keep a 0% win rate through March when I'm playing at Punt City 2. I play a terrible deck.
What deck do you play?
Oh, it's in my username. It's called Curious Control.
Yeah, which Curious Control, dummy?
Oh, the good one.
The good one, and it's still bad.
Four color Thrasios and Vile Smasher. It's a fine deck. It is rough into a blind metagame, and a lot of the games that I win are against my friends because I know how to trick them, and I'm not confident in tricking strangers, so...
Oh fuck! My only event in here is Mox Masters, so I'm 0-3 and 2. God, I shit the bed in Mox Masters.
It doesn't have Punt City 1's numbers in yet. Those will be updated in very shortly. I know Zane's started getting that on there. But other than that, yeah, the profiles page is probably the newest and coolest thing to come out for the community in a long while. Nobody else has this type of software. Nobody else has this type of information. So now you can go on Twitter. Whenever you get into an argument with somebody, just ask them what their win rate is and post your Eminence profile, and it'll add validity to every statement you've ever had.
Just think about it. It's so good.
I have 0 losses in Eminence.
You're undefeated.
Had 0 games played.
My tournament, my win rate is not a number percentage.
There we go. It's pretty sick.
So
All right,
me.
guys. Everyone,
Me,
thank
all of
you
you.
for watching. We're gonna go raid somebody. I'll find somebody. Let's do Beth, Queen of Cardboard, as soon as I copy her name. Can't
Love
do it.
that.
All right, fuck me. All right, /raid Queen of Cardboard.
And thank you, Kev, for the sub.
Yeah,
you
thank you,
modeled
Kev.
it perfectly.
You modeled
Everyone
it
can do it just
perfectly.
like Kev.
Everybody can click 2 buttons. If Kev can click 2 buttons, you can click 2 buttons. See you guys later.